The sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon, casting a soft golden glow across the still waters of Lake Awan. It was 6 o'clock in the morning on a crisp Monday in early spring, and my phone buzzed insistently on the nightstand. Groggily, I reached for it, squinting at the screen through sleep-heavy eyes. It was my neighbor, Thaddeus Miller, Mr. Thad, as I'd always called him. His name alone was enough to jolt me awake. He wasn't the type to call unless something was truly amiss. "Kezia, sugar, good morning," his gravelly voice came through the line, laced with concern. "Listen, there's a crew over at your place. They're tearing into the walls. You know anything about this?" My heart skipped a beat. "Mr. Thad, what contractors?" "I didn't hire anyone." "Well, there's a truck out here and guys are ripping your sunroom apart." I went over and asked, and they said a lady named Eldora Vance was coming by later to check on the progress. Eldora Vance, my mother-in-law. The name hit me like a cold splash of water. "Mr. Thad, I didn't give any permission for that." "I knew it," he replied, his tone turning steely. "The nerve of some people. Listen, I've got my old shotgun in the safe. I'm about to go over there and give those boys a reason to run all the way back to Atlanta." "No, Mr. Thad, please don't. I'm coming right now." "I'll handle it." "Well, hurry up then," he grumbled. "But I'm keeping my eyes on them." I hung up and sprang out of bed, my mind racing. How could this be happening? The lake house wasn't just any property. It was my sanctuary. My inheritance from my beloved grandmother, Hattie Mae Robinson. As I hurriedly dressed in jeans and a sweater, grabbing my keys and the folder containing the property deeds, I couldn't help but replay the events that had led me to this moment. It all started 5 years ago when Grandma Hattie passed away. Grandma Hattie had been a force of nature, a legendary elementary school teacher in Savannah who dedicated 43 years of her life to shaping young minds. She was the kind of woman who could command a room with a single glance. Yet her heart was as warm as the Georgia sun. When my father died when I was just 14, she stepped in without hesitation, providing the parental warmth that my mother, distant and reserved, never quite managed. Our relationship with Mom was polite but cold. Holiday calls, exchanged pleasantries, and little more. Grandma, though, was different. She filled my summers with joy at her lakeside cottage near Lake A1. The cottage itself was modest, a solid 600-square-foot house on 1.5 acres of prime land. Old pecan trees lined the fence, offering shade and a sense of timelessness. The view of the water was breathtaking, especially at dawn when the mist rose like a gentle veil. It wasn't just real estate to me. Every corner held memories. The porch where we'd sip sweet tea and talk about life. The sunroom where we'd read books and watch the rain patter against the glass. The garden where we'd pick tomatoes and laugh about nothing in particular. Grandma's peach cobbler baking in the oven, filling the air with cinnamon and sugar. That scent alone could transport me back to those carefree days. In her will, she left me her 2-bedroom apartment in Atlanta and this cherished cottage. It was a gift that meant the world, especially since I'd been married for only a year at the time to Terrence Vance. Terrence was a good man, kind, hardworking, and genuinely loving. He worked as an operations manager at a major fulfillment center in Charlotte, pulling in about $4,000 a month. It wasn't extravagant, but it was stable, and he always tried to make me happy. There was just one glaring issue. In all his 35 years, he'd never learned to say no to his mother. Eldora Vance had disliked me from the start. I could still picture her at our wedding, sitting with a sour expression, whispering to her sister, Aunt Bernice, about career-driven women who keep their men under their thumb. As the CFO of a major logistics firm, I made a comfortable living, far more than Terrence. But to Eldora, that wasn't a point of pride. It was an insult. She saw it as her son living in his wife's house like some guest. Even though we'd built our life together, over the 5 years of our marriage, I'd poured a lot into the Vance family. $15,000 to renovate their old bungalow, $7,000 for my father-in-law Otis's hip surgery, and a $5,000 loan to my sister-in-law, Nala, that I knew would never be repaid. Eldora accepted it all as her due, without a single thank you. Instead, she'd badmouth me to the family, calling me cold and calculating. Family is about soul and warmth, not just checks, she'd snap whenever Terrence weakly defended me. Now Nala, she's a girl with a heart, unlike some people. Nala, Terrence's 27-year-old sister, was the golden child. She worked at a trendy boutique for minimum wage, spending her days snapping photos of lattes. for her 400 social media followers. Spoiled and immature, she was Eldora's favorite. A year ago, Nala announced her engagement to Decoyne Pierce, a mechanic from a local garage. Eldora wept with joy, dreaming of grandbabies. But there was a hitch. The couple had nowhere to live. Decoyne rented a room in a shared house, and Nala still bunked with her parents in their cramped bungalow. They couldn't afford their own place. That's when Eldora hatched her plan. Sipping sweet tea with Aunt Bernice, she eyed my cottage. "What if we just take over that lake house?" she'd said. "Plenty of room, over an acre right on the water. It's beautiful. We'll add a couple of rooms, and the kids can move right in. Fresh air, the lake, perfect for a young family." "But that's Kezia's place," Otis had muttered. "So what? We're family. What's mine is yours, and what's hers is ours. She's not going to throw her own kin out on the street." Eldora had been coveting the cottage for years. 2 years prior, she'd suggested adding Terrence's name to the deed to keep it in the family. I'd politely declined, and she'd backed off, temporarily. But after Nala's engagement, her obsession reignited. Last summer, I'd invited the whole Vance family to the cottage out of goodwill, hoping to mend fences. We had a cookout, swam in the lake, and Eldora even complimented my garden tomatoes, saying they reminded her of her grandmother's. From then on, she acted as if the place was communal property. "Terrence, talk to your wife about the lake house." She'd called him a week after devising her scheme. "Nala needs a place to live with her husband." "Mom, that's Kezia's house. Her grandmother left it to her," he'd stammered, glancing nervously at me. "What difference does that make?" "Don't be selfish. We're doing this for your sister." Terrence promised to discuss it with me but procrastinated, avoiding the uncomfortable conversation. A year earlier, he'd given his mother a spare set of keys, just in case of emergencies like a burst pipe. I'd been unhappy but stayed silent to avoid seeming petty. Eldora waited 2 weeks for Terrence to act, then took matters into her own hands. Her strategy, create a fait accompli. She'd present me with ongoing construction, forcing me to accept it. Through connections, she hired Isaiah Brooks's crew, claiming ownership and her son's authorization. At the hardware store, she ordered $85,000 in materials on credit, promising Otis would pay the next day. The night before, Nala posted a photo of the cottage on her story. "Our future home. Big changes coming soon?" Her followers gushed, and Aunt Bernice spread the word. Now, as I sped down the highway toward Lake A1, my mind whirled with disbelief and anger. The roads were empty save for a few trucks, and I pushed the speed limit, my knuckles white on the wheel. Was Mr. Thad mistaken? Could there be another Eldora? Deep down, I knew the truth. My mother-in-law had crossed a line, treating my inheritance as her entitlement. The narrow roads to the lake were etched in my memory from childhood, the berry-picking spot, the ditch where Grandma's old car once stuck. Pulling up to the gate, my heart sank. A Brooks construction truck sat parked, and 4 workers bustled about. The sunroom, where Grandma and I drank tea and listened to the lake's whispers, was half demolished. Boards littered the lawn I'd manicured for 2 years. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered, stepping out. Mr. Thad leaned on his fence, shotgun case nearby. "I told them at 6:30, they shouldn't be doing this without the owner," he said. They didn't listen. Young folks always think they're the smartest. I nodded, throat tight, and approached the foreman. A sturdy man in his 50s with tanned skin and graying hair. "Are you in charge here?" He eyed my disheveled appearance. "I'm Isaiah Brooks." "And who are you?" "I'm Keziah Vance, the sole owner of this property." "Who authorized this work?" Isaiah frowned. "A woman named Eldora. Vance. She said she was the owner or the mother of the owner. She's due at 9 mo. I am the owner." "The only owner," I said, voice steady despite the rage. "What documents did she show you?" He rubbed his neck. "None, really. She said it was her son's house. Seemed respectable. Didn't think she'd lie." I pulled out the deed. "Here, Keziah Vance, see the seal?" This was left to me by my grandmother. Eldora is my mother-in-law with 0 legal rights. Isaiah examined it, face paling. So she lied. "We're tearing down someone else's house." He sighed. "Lord have mercy. In 25 years, I've never seen a mother-in-law pull this." At that moment, Sheriff Marcus Thorne's SUV arrived. He'd known me since his deputy days. "Morning, Keziah. Mr. Thad, what's the trouble?" I explained. Sole ownership, unauthorized destruction. Thorne checked the deed and ID, then addressed Isaiah. "Stop everything. Pack up. This is criminal trespass and property damage." Mr. Thad chimed in. Golden rule, if papers ain't right, don't pick up a hammer. Now you're lawbreakers. He fetched binoculars and a chair, settling in like at a show. Lorene, bring coffee. The main character's not here yet. And on cue, Eldora's silver sedan pulled up. She emerged cheerfully with pies, Nala trailing with her phone. Then she froze, knees buckling at the sight, workers packing. Sheriff noting, me with documents. What's this? She screeched. Why are you stopping? I replied calmly. As the legal owner, I called the police. Trespassers destroyed my home without permission. What police? This is family property, for Nala. Sheriff Thorne requested her ID. Records show one owner, Kezia Vance. Your son has no share, nor you. Nala whined, Mom, why are they leaving? We planned rooms. Because it's not yours, I snapped. It never was. From the fence, Mr. Thad. Eldora, what were you thinking? Tearing up another's property? County talk. Stay out, she screamed. Whose deed? Kezia's. Whose permission? None. You're nobody here. Eldora fumed, outmatched. Fine, we'll see who's boss. Thad shrugged. Deed seal owner. You're out of luck. I faced her. You hired a crew to tear down my house. That's felony damage. Thorne nodded. Fine or prison, depending on cost. Eldora paled. Nala gaped. Isaiah apologized. We were lied to. To Eldora, owe $400 for today. She shrieked, 400? You broke things. Not our problem. Pay up. As they left, he gave me his card. For real work, call us. Eldora burst into tears, angry, not remorseful. You ruined everything. For family, for Nala. Nala wailed, why so mean? We're family. Your problem, I said. Save, mortgage, rent. But you'll pay for every board. Thorne documented. Mr. Thad watched amusedly. Once they left, I sat on the porch, head in hands. The sunroom, a pile of wood. Mr. Thad approached. Hang in there. Hattie'd be proud. Thanks, if not for your call. Neighbors, ain't we? By noon, calls came. Foreman for $400. Hardware for $85,000. Total debt, $125,000 plus damages. Evening, Vance group chat buzzed with congratulations turned confusion. Family knew, now embarrassed. Terrence called, Mom hysterical. You called police? I explained facts. I didn't know she'd go far, he whispered. We need to talk. He arrived exhausted, saw damage. Mom wrong. I'm with you. The silver sedan kicked up dust as it sped away from the cottage. Eldora's muffled sobs and Nala's dramatic wails fading into the morning quiet. I stood on the porch steps, surrounded by splintered wood and twisted nails, feeling the weight of what had almost been stolen from me. The sunroom, my grandmother's favorite place, where we had spent countless hours watching storms roll across the lake, was now nothing more than a gaping wound in the side of the house. The load-bearing wall had been partially compromised. Electrical wiring dangled like exposed veins, and deep tire ruts scarred the lawn I had so carefully tended. Sheriff Thorne finished taking photographs of the damage, his notepad filled with meticulous details. He turned to me with a sympathetic nod. Kezia, I've got everything I need for the report. Criminal trespass, vandalism, destruction of property. This is serious. Depending on the final appraisal, your mother-in-law could be looking at felony charges. I'll file this today, and the DA will decide how to proceed. You did the right thing calling me. Thank you, Sheriff, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I just want this stopped before it gets worse. He tipped his hat. It's stopped. And if she or anyone else shows up here without your permission again, you call me directly, day or night. As his SUV pulled away, Mr. Thad climbed over the low fence separating our properties, moving with the deliberate slowness of a man who had earned every ache in his joints. He surveyed the wreckage, shaking his head. Hang in there, daughter, he said softly. We'll get through this. I've lived next door 20 years. I remember your Grandma Hattie, God rest her soul. She'd be proud of how you handled yourself today. Stood your ground like a woman who knows her worth. His words hit me harder than I expected. I forced a small smile. Thank you, Mr. Thad. If you hadn't called me this morning, well, we're neighbors, aren't we? He shrugged as if it were the most natural thing in the world. And that mother-in-law of yours, she's a piece of work. But you faced her down. It was a beauty to watch. He glanced back toward his house, where Lorene was visible through the kitchen window. I'm going to go calm my wife down. She was ready to march over here with her rolling pin. But you call if you need anything, here? I nodded, watching him shuffle back to his fence. For a moment I just sat there on the steps, head in my hands, letting the reality sink in. My own mother-in-law had tried to seize my inheritance. Not through discussion, not through asking. She had gone behind my back, lied to contractors, ordered materials on credit, and started demolishing my home as if it were already hers. By noon, the calls started coming in. First was Isaiah Brooks, the foreman. "Ma'am, I'm real sorry again about this morning. We truly thought it was legitimate, but we haven't been paid for the call-out yet. That's $400 for labor, transport, and the time we spent. I hate to ask after everything, but I understand," I said. "That's between you and Eldora Vance. She hired you." He sighed. "Yes, ma'am. I'll be sending her an invoice. And again, if you ever need honest work done, with papers in order, you give me a call." Next came the hardware store manager, a man named Mr. Jenkins, whose voice was tight with barely contained anger. "Mrs. Vance, Kezia Vance? This is Jenkins over at County Line Hardware. Your unrelative Eldora Vance placed an order yesterday for $85,000 worth of building materials. Lumber, drywall, fixtures, the works. She said her husband would settle the account today. He never showed. We've got a warehouse full of supplies earmarked for your lake property, and no payment. We need this resolved or we'll have to pursue collections." I closed my eyes, pinching the bridge of my nose. "Mr. Jenkins, I am the sole owner of that property. I did not authorize any purchase. Eldora Vance has no legal right to charge anything to that address or to me. You'll need to take this up with her directly." There was a long pause. "Well, I'll be—" She seemed so sure of herself. "Had keys and everything?" "Those keys were given without my full consent," I said. "But regardless, she committed fraud. You might want to speak with Sheriff Thorne. He was out here this morning." Jenkins muttered something under his breath about family drama and promised to look into it. I knew what that meant. Eldora was now on the hook for $85,400, plus the $400 to the crew, and that didn't even include the cost to repair the damage she'd already caused. That evening, back in Charlotte, I sat at the kitchen table trying to process the day. Terrence was still at work, so the house was quiet. Out of morbid curiosity, I opened the Vance family group chat, one I usually muted and ignored. What I saw stunned me. The chat had been buzzing for days. Photos of the cottage that Nala had posted weeks earlier were still pinned, with captions like "future home goals" and "big changes coming." Underneath, dozens of messages from extended family. "Eldora, you're such a blessing doing this for the kids. Nala is so lucky to have a mama like you. Can't wait for the housewarming photos. That lake view is to die for. God bless you for keeping it in the family." Some people don't understand family loyalty these days. Third and fourth cousins I'd met only at weddings were chiming in, fully convinced the cottage belonged to the Vance family collectively. Aunt Bernice had apparently called half the family tree with the good news. Now, though, the tone was shifting. Someone had posted a blurry photo of the sheriff's SUV parked at the cottage that morning. Underneath, "Anybody know what's going on at the lake house? Saw police out there." Then silence for hours. Then, "Elda, you okay?" People saying something about the police. "Eldora, is it true the house isn't actually yours to renovate? Is somebody going to explain?" Eldora had left the chat entirely. Nala had deleted every single post about her future home. Aunt Bernice tried damage control. "Y'all stop spreading rumors. It's just a misunderstanding." I stared at the screen, feeling a cold satisfaction. The public humiliation was just beginning. My phone rang. "Terrence," I answered, bracing myself. "Kezia." His voice sounded small, lost. "My mom called. She was hysterical, crying, screaming. Said you called the police on her. That she almost got arrested." What is going on?" I took a deep breath and laid it out, calm and factual. This morning, contractors started demolishing the sunroom at the lake house. They were hired by your mother, who told them she owned the place. She ordered $85,000 in materials on credit and told them you had given her authority. I arrived with the deed, stopped the work, and called Sheriff Thorne because it was criminal trespass and destruction of property. "The damage is extensive, Terrence. The sunroom is gone." Silence stretched on the line. Finally, he whispered, I didn't know she would go that far. She mentioned wanting the cottage for Nala, but I thought she was just dreaming out loud, making plans. I never thought." "Terrence," I cut in, "she destroyed the sunroom my grandmother built with her own hands. She lied to contractors, racked up over $100,000 in debt in one day, And when confronted, she didn't apologize. She blamed me. This wasn't a dream. This was a crime. More silence. "I'm coming home," he said at last. "We need to talk." An hour later, he walked through the door looking like he'd aged 10 years. His work shirt was wrinkled, his eyes red. He dropped his keys on the counter and sank into a chair at the table. "I stopped by the cottage on the way home," he said quietly. "I saw what they did. The sunroom. Grandma Hattie loved that porch. I poured him a glass of iced tea and sat across from him. Your mother didn't do this out of the goodness of her heart, Terrence. She decided she could take my property. Not our property, mine. You have no legal or moral claim to it, and she certainly doesn't." He nodded slowly, staring into his glass. "She destroyed something irreplaceable," I continued. "She lied to everyone. Contractors, the hardware store, the whole family. And when I protected what's mine, she screamed at me like I was the villain." Terrence looked up, eyes glistening. "I know you're right. You're completely right. I've let her walk over boundaries for years because, I don't know, I didn't want conflict. But this is too far." I leaned forward. "I need you to choose a side, Terrence. Either you're with me or you're with her. There is no middle ground anymore. Not after this." He was quiet for a long time. Then finally, "I'm with you. Of course I'm with you. Mom was completely wrong. I'm going to tell her that, clearly." The next morning, I hired a professional appraiser recommended by Sheriff Thorne. A young man named Caleb arrived with a camera, measuring tape, and clipboard. He spent 2 hours documenting every inch of the damage. The demolished sunroom, approximately 200 square feet, the compromised load-bearing wall, ruined lawn, exposed and cut wiring, scattered debris. 3 days later, the report came back. Total damages $25,000. I forwarded it immediately to my lawyer, Mrs. Montgomery, a sharp, no-nonsense woman I'd worked with on corporate matters. "The case is airtight," she told me over the phone. "Unauthorized entry, intentional destruction, fraud against third parties. We're sending a formal demand letter today. $25,000 within 14 days, or we file suit. We can also pursue criminal charges if you want. But the civil route will get you paid faster." "Civil for now," I said. "But I want her to feel the full weight." The letter went out that afternoon, and then the storm truly began. First came Otis, my father-in-law. His call was quiet, almost pleading. "Kezia, can't we settle this like family? 25,000? We don't have that kind of money." "Mr. Otis," I replied, keeping my tone even, "I understand it's difficult, but I don't have money to throw away either. Your wife destroyed my home. I didn't go to your bungalow and start breaking walls." He sighed heavily. "I know. I told her, Elda, maybe you shouldn't, but once she gets an idea." Next was Aunt Bernice, 3 calls in one night. First persuasion, "Kezia, honey, forgive and forget. Family sticks together." Then shame. "How can you take your own family to court? What would people say?" Finally threats. "The whole family's gonna turn their backs on you. You'll be all alone." I ended the last call with a simple, "Let them. I don't need family that supports theft." Nala launched a subtle social media campaign. Posts like, "Some people value money over family. How can someone be so heartless when a young couple just wants a home?" Her 400 followers liked and commented furiously, oblivious to the full story. Eldora called Terrence 5, 6, 7 times a day, sobbing that I was putting them on the street. Terrence's response grew firmer each time. "Mom, you should have asked permission. You can't just take someone's house." I checked the group chat daily. The shift was deliciously dramatic. Morning of the incident, celebration. By noon, confusion. By evening, questions. Then outright accusations of lying. Someone leaked that the deed was only in my name. Someone else posted a screenshot of the sheriff's report, small counties talk. Eldora's exit from the chat became the final confirmation. Terrence showed me his phone one night, shaking his head. "It's a circus. I've been telling you for 5 years, it's a circus. Now I see it." "You do," I said quietly. "And I'm done being the ringmaster." The 14 days passed. No payment, only a message relayed through Terrence. "We have no money. Kezia needs to be understanding." I called Mrs. Montgomery. "File the suit." But Eldora wasn't done fighting yet. Over the next weeks, she scrambled. She pawned her gold jewelry, chains, earrings, even her wedding ring for $3,000. Aunt Bernice lent $2,500. A cousin in Charleston sent $1,000. Otis took cash advances and side jobs. They sold Eldora's prized mink coat, her good china, an antique rug. Piece by piece, they scraped together the money. Exactly 30 days after the demand letter, $25,000 appeared in my account. No note, no apology, just the transfer. Terrence stared at the bank notification with me. They must have sold everything they could. They should have thought of that before swinging hammers, I replied. And then came the final fallout, Nala's wedding. Word came through the family grapevine that Decoin had cooled significantly once the free lake house vanished. Dates canceled, calls ignored. Finally, he told her straight, Nala, let's postpone the wedding. Your family has too much drama right now. 2 weeks later, they broke up for good. Nala blamed me. Eldora blamed me. But deep down, they knew the truth. Entitlement had cost them everything they thought they deserved. I took back every spare key to the cottage. If we go to the lake, I told Terrence, we go together. Keys stay with me. He didn't argue. You're doing the right thing. For the first time in years, I felt the boundaries holding firm. The morning after the $25,000 finally landed in my account, I drove back to the lake house alone. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine and water, the way it always did in early summer. I parked in the gravel driveway and just sat in the car for a long minute, staring at the wounded side of the cottage. The sunroom was still a skeleton, exposed studs, dangling wires, piles of broken drywall and splintered wood that the crew had left behind in their hasty departure. It looked like a crime scene, which, in a way, it was. I stepped out and walked the perimeter slowly, taking inventory of every scar. The lawn was rutted and patchy where heavy trucks had churned the grass. The garden beds I had spent years cultivating were trampled. Even the old pecan trees seemed to droop a little, as if they too were grieving the violation. But the lake was still there, shimmering peacefully beyond the fence, and the porch steps were intact. I sat on them, the same spot where I had collapsed the morning of the disaster, and let the quiet wash over me. For the first time since Mr. Thad's early call, I allowed myself to cry. Not dramatic sobs, just silent tears for my grandmother, for the memories that had been physically torn apart, for the betrayal that still stung like an open wound. My phone buzzed. A text from Terrence. You at the lake? Need anything? I typed back. Just sitting here. I'm okay. He replied immediately, I love you. We're going to make this right. I believed him. For the first time in years, I truly believed he was on my side. A few minutes later, I heard the creak of Mr. Thad's gate. He appeared at the fence line carrying 2 mugs of coffee, steam curling into the cool air. Thought you might need this, he said, handing one over as he eased himself down beside me on the steps. Lorene made it strong. Said you looked like you could use fortifying. I accepted the mug gratefully. Thank you. For the coffee and for everything. He waved it off. Ain't nothing. Now what's the plan? You gonna fix her up? I have to, I said. I can't leave her like this. Grandma would never forgive me. He nodded thoughtfully. Good. Place like this deserves to be whole again. You got a contractor in mind? I was thinking of calling Isaiah Brooks back, the foreman from that day. He seemed decent and he offered. But honestly, after what happened, I'm nervous about trusting anyone. Mr. Thad took a slow sip of coffee. I might know some boys, honest ones, retired from the trade mostly, but still got good hands. They'd do right by you, and they won't charge city prices. I looked at him. You'd vouch for them? With my life, he said simply. That afternoon, I followed Mr. Thad to his backyard, where he made a few calls on an old flip phone. By evening, he had a crew lined up. Silas Turner's heading it up, he told me. Gray hair, built like a bull, voice like gravel. Best framer I ever worked with. He'll come out tomorrow, give you a fair quote. True to his word, Silas arrived the next morning in a weathered pickup, accompanied by 2 younger men who turned out to be his sons. They walked the site in silence at first, measuring, photographing, taking notes. Silas ran his hand along the compromised load-bearing wall, muttering to himself. Shoddy stop work, he said finally. They didn't even brace it proper when they quit. But the bones are good. Your grandma built solid. He quoted me 20,000, 5,000 less than the lowest bid I'd gotten. From the city contractors, 3 weeks, he promised. Better than before, new insulation, energy-efficient windows, proper wiring, and hardwood railings on the new porch. We'll make her proud. I shook his hand without hesitation. Let's do it. Work began the following Monday. I drove out every few days to check progress. And each time I was met with something unexpected. The first surprise came a week in. I pulled up to find not 3 men but 7 or 8. Some were framing the new sunroom walls, others installing windows. A couple mixing cement for the extended porch foundation. Tools clattered, radios played old Motown, and the air smelled of fresh-cut pine. I found Mr. Thad in the yard, arms crossed, supervising like a general. "Mr. Thad, who are all these people?" He grinned. "What, you don't like the turnout?" "These are my old crew, boys I worked with 30, 40 years ago." Silas put out the word. I called a few more. Weekend work, no pay. They came to help. I stared, speechless. "But I can pay them. I have the insurance and the settlement money." He shook his head firmly. "They ain't here for money." I told him a good woman got wronged. Her mother-in-law tried to steal her home place, wrecked it bad, said we ought to help put it right. And here they are. Brotherhood, Kezia, solidarity. One of the men, an older gentleman with a salt and pepper beard, waved from the roof. "Morning, ma'am. We'll have this sunroom tighter than a drum by Friday." I felt my throat tighten. These were strangers, most of them. Yet they were giving their time, their skill, their weekend, freely. Mr. Thad clapped me on the shoulder. "Go on inside. Lorene sent sandwiches and sweet tea. Men are getting hungry." The rebuild moved faster than I could have dreamed. What Silas quoted as 3 weeks became 2. They didn't just repair, they improved. Better insulation to keep the winter chill out. Larger, double-paned windows that framed the lake like a painting. A wider porch with sturdy hardwood railings that gleamed in the sun. They even reseeded the lawn and rebuilt my garden beds. Adding a stone border for the lady of the house, one of them said with a wink. Every visit I brought food, Lorene's pound cake, store-bought fried chicken, homemade lemonade. The men accepted it graciously, joking and telling stories while they ate on the new porch steps. I learned their names, Silas and his sons, Jonah and Caleb. Old Jimmy, who'd framed houses since the 70s. Marcus, a retired electrician who rewired the entire addition for free. Big Mike, who poured the concrete foundation smoother than glass. And of course Mr. Thad, who was there every day, directing traffic and keeping spirits high. One afternoon, as the sun slanted golden across the water, I sat with Mr. Thad on the half-finished porch. "These men," I said quietly, "they don't even know me. Why would they do this?" He thought for a moment. "Because it's right. Because somebody tried to take what was yours, and that offends a working man's sense of justice. And because your grandma was good people. Hattie Mae taught half these boys' kids back in the day. They remember." I looked out at the lake, eyes stinging again. I lost my dad young. Always missed having that kind of steady male presence, advice, protection. And now here you are. Mr. Thad cleared his throat, suddenly interested in his coffee mug. "Well, neighbors look out for each other. That's all?" But I saw the shine in his eyes too. The sunroom was finished ahead of schedule. I walked through it the day they declared it done, running my hand along the smooth railings, standing in the middle of the room where Grandma and I used to sit. Light poured in from every angle. The view was better than before, unobstructed, serene. Silas handed me the final invoice. $18,700. "We came in under budget," he said. Materials were cheaper than expected, and the boys donated labor. I wrote the check, then pulled out the envelope. Mr. Thad and Lorene had tried to give me, weeks earlier, the $3,000. They'd saved to help. "Silas, split this among the crew, please." He shook his head. "They won't take it. Then donate it to whatever charity y'all choose. But it's from me with gratitude." He smiled. "I'll see it gets used right." That evening, I sat alone in the new sunroom for the first time. The windows were open, letting in the soft sounds of crickets and lapping water. Everything smelled of fresh wood and possibility. I whispered into the quiet, "Grandma, it's better than before. I promise I protected it." 6 months passed in a blur of routine. I was still CFO, buried in spreadsheets and board meetings. Terrence was still at the fulfillment center. But something had shifted between us. The crisis had forced him to grow a spine, and our marriage felt stronger, built on mutual respect instead of my constant accommodation. The Vances were digging out of their self-made hole. Otis took side jobs fixing electrical work for neighbors. Eldora, for the first time in over a decade, got a job cleaning rooms at a local clinic, minimum wage, early shifts, no glory. Nala remained at the boutique, still posting curated lattes and outfits, but the dreamy future home content had vanished entirely. Her follower count had stalled. We saw the Vances only at major holidays now, tense. Polite gatherings where conversation stayed surface level. I had cut off all financial help permanently. No more renovations, no more loans, no more bailouts. Terence supported the boundary without complaint. One warm summer evening, we hosted a gathering at the cottage to celebrate its rebirth. Tables stretched under the pecan trees, ribs smoked on the grill, sides overflowed, Lorene's potato salad, coleslaw, cornbread, peach cobbler made from my own. Tree, Mr. Thad's homemade muscadine. Wine flowed freely. Guests were the people who had earned their place. Mr. Thad and Lorene. Silas and his wife, Jonah and Caleb with their families, Jimmy, Marcus, Big Mike, a few other neighbors, and even Sheriff Thorne, who stopped by after his shift in civilian clothes. Mr. Thad raised his glass when everyone was seated. To the lady of the house, Kezia Vance, for her patience, her strength, and for not backing down when it mattered most. Glasses clinked. Cheers rose. Someone shouted, "To Kezia!" Sheriff Thorne held his wine up to the light. "This is fine stuff, Thad. You'll have to teach me the recipe." "Nothing to teach," Mr. Thad grinned. "Pick the grapes at the right time and don't be stingy with the sugar." Lorene nudged him. "Thad, stop bragging about wine. Tell them about the time you drove the truck into the ditch." "I didn't drive it in. The brakes failed." Laughter erupted. Story followed story. Construction mishaps. Walled-up toolboxes near misses. Tall tales half true and half exaggerated. The night filled with easy voices, clinking glasses, children running through the yard chasing fireflies. I looked around at these people, neighbors, workers, friends, who had shown up when Blood Family had betrayed me. My eyes met Mr. Thad's across the table. He winked. That simple gesture carrying more warmth than any apology Eldora could ever offer. When the guests began to leave, I walked Mr. Thad to the gate. "I just want to say thank you," I said, voice thick. "For everything." I hugged him tightly, the way I used to hug my father. He patted my back awkwardly. "It's all right, daughter. We're people, ain't we? That's what we do." I pulled back. "You've been like a father to me, truly." He was quiet a moment, then said softly, "Well, if that's how it is, then I'm glad. Never had daughters, just rowdy sons. And you've always been a good girl. Your Grandma Hattie'd be proud." We stood in silence, watching the sunset paint the lake in fire and gold. Then he clapped his hands. "Enough sappy stuff. There's still wine left. Sin to waste it." I laughed through the tears that threatened again. "Some say family is sacred, that you forgive everything because of blood. But I know better now. Family is respect, support, showing up when it counts. Those who lie, scheme, and tear down your walls while hiding behind family, they're just relatives you tolerate from a safe distance. Real family can be found in unexpected places. A childhood neighbor who watches over you. His wife who bakes the best bread. A crew of retired builders who give their weekends because it's right. My cottage is safe. The sunroom stands stronger than ever. The lake is beautiful, and for the first time in years I feel truly at home." December had settled over Lake A1 like a soft quilt. Cool nights, crisp days, and water so still it mirrored the sky perfectly. Nearly 18 months had passed since the E. Morning my phone buzzed at 6 a.m. with Mr. Thad's warning. The cottage stood prouder than ever. The new sunroom gleaming with its wide windows and sturdy railings. The lawn lush and green again under a light frost. Terence and I had spent Thanksgiving weekend there, stringing lights along the porch and hanging a wreath. Lorene had made from magnolia leaves and pine cones. It felt like a real home again, not just a battleground. Life had found a new rhythm. Terence and I were stronger than we had been in years. He had kept his promise. He stood firm with me. Even when Eldora tried every trick in her book to pull him back into her orbit. Our marriage had survived its biggest test. And on the other side of it, we had discovered a partnership built on trust instead of avoidance. The Vance family, on the other hand, had not fared as well. Eldora's pride had taken the hardest hit. The woman who once held court at every family gathering, dispensing opinions like gospel, now moved quietly through the world. Her cleaning job at the clinic had become permanent. Early mornings scrubbing exam rooms, restocking supplies, mopping floors. She wore scrubs now instead of her Sunday best. And her hands, once adorned with gold rings she had pawned, were rough from bleach and hard work. Otis said she came home exhausted, ate a small plate of whatever was quick, and went to bed without complaint. The fire that had driven her to scheme and demand was banked low. replaced by a weary resignation. Otis himself worked 2 jobs, his regular electrical maintenance gig and weekend side work, fixing wiring in neighbors' homes. The extra money went straight to paying off the remaining debts. The hardware store had settled for installments after the initial $85,000 scare, but interest and late fees had ballooned it. Their savings were gone. The mink coat, the china, the jewelry, all memories now. Their bungalow, once cluttered with knickknacks and photos of better days, felt sparse. Nala had moved out briefly after the breakup with Decoyne, renting a cramped studio apartment above a beauty shop in town. She lasted 4 months before the rent proved too much on her boutique salary, and she moved back into her childhood bedroom. The wedding dress she had bought on credit hung in the closet, still in its garment bag, a silent reminder of dreams that had evaporated. Her social media had changed too. No more filtered lattes and future home fantasies. Now it was quieter, occasional outfit posts, quotes about growth and new chapters, and carefully curated shots that never showed the full truth. Her follower count had dipped below 300. The extended family had splintered. Some cousins still spoke to Eldora out of loyalty or pity, but many had distanced themselves after the full story spread. Aunt Bernice tried to play peacemaker for a while, inviting me to holiday gatherings, with veiled pleas for reconciliation, but I politely declined. Terence went alone once or twice, coming home quieter than usual. He told me the conversations always circled back to money, how hard things were, how Kasia could help if she wanted to. He stopped going altogether. We, meanwhile, had built something new. Mr. Thad and Lorene had become family in every way that mattered. Sunday dinners rotated between our houses, sometimes in Charlotte, more often at the lake. Lorene taught me her recipes: cornbread that never failed, collards slow-cooked with ham hock, peach cobbler with a lattice crust. Mr. Thad taught Terence how to maintain the cottage properly, how to winterize pipes, repair pecan tree limbs after storms, check the foundation for settling. In return, Terence helped Thad with heavier chores as age crept into the old man's joints. Silas and his crew still came by now and then. Jonah, the older son, had started his own small, contracting business and used the cottage, rebuild as a reference. Whenever he was in the area, he'd stop to check the work, make small adjustments, drink a beer on the porch with Thad and Terence. Big Mike brought his grandkids fishing off our dock one weekend, teaching them patience the way only a man who pours concrete for a living can. Sheriff Thorne dropped in occasionally too, usually with a pie his wife had, baked as thanks for keeping the county interesting for a day. He and Thad had a running rivalry over whose muscadine wine was better, though everyone knew Thad's won hands down. One Saturday in early December, Terence and I drove out to the cottage to decorate for Christmas. We hauled boxes from the attic, ornaments Grandma Hattie had collected over decades, strings of colored lights, a worn but beloved angel for the treetop. As we worked, snow began to fall, rare for Georgia, light and fluttering like confectioner's sugar. Mr. Thad appeared at the door, bundled in a coat, carrying a thermos. Lorene sent hot chocolate, spiked if you want it. We invited him in, and the 3 of us sat in the sunroom, watching the snow settle over the lake. The room was warm, the windows framing a scene straight out of a holiday card. "You know," Thad said after a while, "I've been thinking about putting the house in a trust. Make sure it goes to somebody who'll love it the way you do." I looked at him surprised. "Mr. Thad, you don't have to—" He held up a hand. Lorene and I talked it over. Our boys are settled up north, got their own lives. They don't want the upkeep. But you're here. You feel about this land the way Hattie did. The way I do." He paused, voice rough. "We'd like you to have it one day. Not tomorrow, Lord willing, we got years left, but when the time comes." Tears pricked my eyes. Terence reached over and squeezed my hand. "I don't know what to say," I whispered. "Say you'll keep taking care of it," Thad replied. "And keep letting old men drink coffee on your porch." I laughed through the tears. Always. That night, after Thad went home, Terence and I stood on the porch watching the snow. The lake was a dark mirror reflecting the lights we'd strung along the railing. "I never thought I'd feel this peaceful," he said quietly. "After everything." I leaned into him. "Me neither." He wrapped his arms around me. "I'm sorry it took something so extreme for me to see how toxic my family dynamic was. I should have stood up sooner." You stood up when it counted, I said. That's what matters. We stayed out there until the cold drove us inside, then made love in front of the fireplace, the one Grandma had insisted on keeping even when central heat was installed. It felt like closing a circle. Christmas Eve arrived clear and cold. We hosted again, the same crew as the summer gathering plus a few more neighbors. The tables groaned under turkey, ham, dressing, casseroles, pies. Thad's wine flowed, stories got taller, laughter echoed across the water. At one point, Nala's name came up. Someone had seen her at the boutique, looking thinner, quieter. The conversation lingered awkwardly for a moment, then moved on. No one asked about Eldora or Otis. They hadn't been invited, and no one expected them. Later, as guests began to leave, Mr. Thad pulled me aside. "Got something for you," he said, pressing a small wrapped box into my hand. Inside was a delicate silver necklace, a simple pendant shaped like a pecan leaf. Engraved on the back with, "Family is what you make it, T&L. I hugged him so hard he grunted. "Young lady, you're gonna crack my ribs," he grumbled. But he hugged back just as fierce. When everyone was gone and the house was quiet, Terrence and I cleaned up slowly, moving around each other in easy silence. We left the tree lights on and sat in the sunroom with the last of the wine. "I used to think family meant obligation," I said into the dark. "Endless giving, no matter how much it cost me." Terrence nodded. "I thought it meant loyalty, even when it was blind." "Now we know better," I said. He raised his glass. "To the family we chose." We clinked softly. Outside, the snow had stopped, leaving the world clean and hushed. The lake reflected the moon, steady and eternal. And inside the sunroom my grandmother had loved, I finally felt the peace she had always wanted for me. Some ties bind you until they choke. Others lift you up and set you free. I had cut the ones that choked, and in their place, I had woven something stronger, roots that went deeper than blood, built on respect, kindness, and showing up when it mattered. The cottage was safe. The lake was beautiful, and for the first time in my life, I knew exactly where I belonged. 5 years have passed since that frantic Monday morning when Mr. Thad's call saved my grandmother's cottage from being carved up by strangers. It is now the summer of 2030, and Lake A1 is at its most glorious, warm sunlight dancing on the water, cicadas singing in the pecan trees, the air thick with the scent of honeysuckle and fresh-cut grass. The cottage looks better than it ever has. The sunroom, rebuilt stronger and brighter by Silas and the crew, has become the heart of the house again. We added a small library nook with built-in bookshelves along one wall, filled with Grandma Hattie's old teaching books, my childhood favorites, and new volumes Terrence and I have collected over the years. The porch railings gleam with annual coats of varnish, and the garden beds burst with tomatoes, okra, and zinnias that Lorene helped me plant. Terrence and I still live primarily in Charlotte. He rose to regional director at the fulfillment center, and I'm now executive vice president at the logistics firm. But the lake house is no longer just a weekend escape. It's home in the deepest sense. We spend every holiday here, most summers, and long weekends whenever we can steal them. Mr. Thad and Lorene are still next door, though time has slowed them both. Thad turned 82 last spring, his steps a little shorter, his hands a little more arthritic, but his eyes are as sharp as ever and his wit sharper. Lorene, at 80, still rules the kitchen and still sends over pound cake just because they deeded their property to us 3 years ago. Exactly as Thad promised that snowy December day. It's held in a trust now. When they're gone, the land will stay whole. The houses connected by one long fence line, the way it should be. Their sons visit occasionally from up north, polite but distant, happy their parents are cared for. They call me Kezia and seem quietly grateful that someone is here day to day. I call them when Thad needs a doctor's visit scheduled or when Lorene forgets a medication. It's a natural rhythm. We are the daughters and sons they didn't have nearby. Silas passed 2 years ago, suddenly but peacefully, out on a job site doing what he loved. The crew gathered at the cottage for the repast, dozens of men in work boots and clean shirts, telling stories until the sun went down. Jonah runs the business now, and he still stops by to check the roof or the foundation, just in case. Big Mike's grandkids, now teenagers, mow both lawns in the summer for pocket money and fishing privileges off our dock. Sheriff Thorne retired last year. His successor is a young woman who grew up in the county and remembers the lake house incident as local legend. She waved the story off with a laugh when I met her. Everybody still talks about the mother-in-law who tried to steal a house in broad daylight. As for the Vances, they exist on the edges of our lives now, like distant planets in a different orbit. Eldora retired from the clinic last year at 72, worn down by years of physical labor she was never meant for. The debts are finally paid, but there's little left. She and Otis live quietly in the bungalow, tending a small vegetable patch and watching game shows in the evenings. They send Christmas cards, store-bought, with neutral messages like, "Blessings to you and yours." We send one back. That's the extent of it. Nala married 2 years ago quietly, to a steady man named Curtis who works for the power company. No big wedding, no lake house dreams, just a courthouse ceremony and a small reception at the VFW hall. She has a toddler now, a little boy with her eyes and Curtis's calm demeanor. She posts pictures sometimes, playgrounds, first steps, ordinary joys. I like them from afar but never comment. There's no animosity left, just a quiet acceptance that our paths diverged long ago. Terrence sees his parents once or twice a year. He drives down for Otis's birthday, or if there's a health scare. The visits are short, polite. Eldora no longer asks for money or favors. She knows better. Sometimes she tries small talk about the weather or the old neighborhood. Terrence listens, nods and leaves when the hour is up. He always calls me on the way home. It was fine, quiet. I can hear the relief in his voice. We never had children of our own. It wasn't a dramatic decision, just something that never quite happened amid careers, the crisis, and rebuilding our foundation. But the cottage is never empty of young voices. Jonah's kids, Mike's grandkids, neighbors' children. They run through the yard. Fish off the dock, pick pecans in the fall. We teach them the same lessons Grandma Hattie taught me. Respect the land. Leave things better than you found them. Family is who shows up. Last month, on the 5th anniversary of the rebuild completion, we held a big cookout, bigger than any before. Tables stretched from the porch to the water's edge. Half the county seemed sat in his usual spot old under crew the biggest members, pecan neighbors, tree, new and old, holding court with a glass Sheriff of his Thorne, legendary retired but still telling stories. Lorene fussed over platters. Even the young appraiser refusing Caleb, help until her documented the original finally took the spoon away, and now has Terrence his own firm. The grill, flipping ribs and laughing with Jonah about some long-ago construction mishap. I stood on the porch for a moment, taking it all in, the laughter, the clinking glasses, the children chasing fireflies as dusk settled. The lake shimmered gold and rose in the setting sun. The same view Grandma Hattie had loved for decades. Mr. Thad caught my eye and raised his glass. I walked over and sat beside him. 5 years, he said softly. Look what you made of it. We made of it, I corrected. He chuckled, stubborn as ever. I leaned my head on his shoulder. The way I used to with my father, the way I did with Grandma on this very porch. You know, I said, people still ask me sometimes if I regret cutting ties the way I did. If blood should have won out. He was quiet for a long moment, watching the light fade over the water. Blood gives you a start, he said finally, but it don't guarantee a finish. Love, respect, showing up when the chips are down, that's what carries you across the line. I nodded, throat tight. He patted my hand. You chose right, daughter, and we chose you right back. Later that night, after the last guest left and the dishes were done, Terrence and I sat in the sunroom with the windows open to the warm night air. Crickets sang. An owl called from the trees. The moon hung full and low over the lake. Terrence reached for my hand. Happy? I thought about it. Really thought about everything. We had lost and everything we had gained. Happier than I ever thought I could be, I said. He smiled. The lines around his eyes deeper now, but softer. Me too. We sat in silence, listening to the gentle lap of water against the shore. Some people spend their whole lives chasing a sense of belonging, thinking it's tied to the family they were born into. I know better now. Family isn't just the name on a deed or the blood in your veins. It's the neighbor who calls at dawn to warn you of danger. It's the crew of old men who give their weekends to rebuild what was broken. It's the husband who finally chooses you over habit and fear. It's the elderly couple who hand you their legacy because you loved it the way they did. It's the laughter echoing across the water on a summer night, the shared meals, the quiet moments when no words are needed. My grandmother's cottage is safe. The lake is still beautiful, and the roots I've put down here, chosen, nurtured, strong, are deeper than blood could ever reach. This is my family. This is my home, and it always will be.